While I've been researching 70s toys, I have noticed that there is a definite lack of fantasy-inspired toys throughout the 70s. Now, there is one area where there was enough fantasy to shake a sword at, and that is board games. So, in this episode, we are going to take a look at fantasy board games from the 1970s. So, stick around. Dorks and Dorkettes, and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name is Rob, and in this episode we are continuing our 70s September coverage here at the channel. Now, one of the things that I noticed while researching 70s toys was that there's a definite lack of fantasy-inspired toys. Unless we're talking about, like, historical knights and things like that. But yeah, it's a real bummer. I mean, when we were a little bit older in the 80s and playing with toys, fantasy was everywhere. I mean, one of the most popular toy lines throughout the 80s, Masters of the Universe, is definitely fantasy inspired, and it was everywhere. Fantasy was in our movies, our cartoons, our toys, it was everywhere. But in the 70s, it was dry. But there is one area where fantasy exploded, and that was in board games. Now, I think this boom comes from the birth of Dungeons & Dragons in 1974. But even before that, Gary Gygax, TSR, released Chainmail in 1971, which was more of a miniatures-based tactical war game. But they used the guts of that to create what we now know as the modern role-playing game of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I don't know if all points lead back to Dungeons & Dragons when it comes to our growing up with fantasy all around us throughout the 80s. I want to think that it does. But it definitely reflects in the 70s board games, because there are so many fantasy games at that time, and a definite boom of them after 1974. So, without further ado, let's get to our first game on the list. Our first forgotten fantasy board game from the 1970s is Quest of the Magic Ring. This was released by Land of Legend in 1975, and you can guess just by the title that it is Tolkien-inspired by Lord of the Rings. Now, I don't know if it was official, but it's definitely based on the trilogy of books. Now, from what I can read, this was considered a simple board game. Players take on the roles of the main characters, like Frodo, Gandalf, Sauron. Now, this game came with a large paper map as its game board, and it's pretty awesome looking. It has a lot of the major landmarks from the books, a lot of colorful artwork, and some of the supporting critters and creatures kind of here and there. Now, players move along the pathways on the map with a normal dice roll, and whenever their character counter crosses paths with another, there are rules for how it will break down. Combat, capturing, death, things like that. Now, the simplicity of this game, it doesn't have like little character models like we are known to find in modern board games. No, these are just little colored stones, and the colored stones are the different characters or factions of Middle-earth. Now, there's certain spaces on the map that are different havens or hazards for certain players. So, a good place like Bree would be great for Frodo, but not good for Sauron. Things like that. Now, there's a couple ways to win this game, depending on which faction you were playing. If you're the Fellowship, you have to get the ring to Mount Doom and throw it in the Crack of Fire, or just skip all that and destroy the Dark Tower of Sauron. Now, Sauron can win by either taking the ring or the ring bearer to the Dark Tower. So, you can play two different sides with two different ways of winning. Now, this was for 2 to 7 players, so it looks like there could potentially be a lot going on with this game, and it probably could be pretty fun. Now, I could find a few still intact out on the secondary market, and yeah, they start at a very fair price, but kind of go up to a more expensive price. So, if you're a collector of Tolkien merchandise, this could be something right up your alley. Our second forgotten board game is based on a movie franchise that ran throughout the late 60s and 70s. These are the Sinbad movies, and the game is just simply titled Sinbad. The game says straight up that it is a game of excitement and adventure from the Columbia Pictures Sinbad films. So it kind of takes all of the Sinbad movies and globs them together, which is really awesome when you look at this game board. I mean, it is populated with all of the best of Ray Harryhausen's monsters. I mean, everything from Minotaur to the Griffin to the Cyclops. I mean, it's awesome. And I just have to say, growing up, Sinbad movies, I mean, to me, were like up there with Star Wars. I was glued to the TV whenever they were on, like Saturday afternoons, or whenever we were able to get a VHS copy of them at the video store. I just loved Sinbad movies, and I know Ray Harryhausen is just a large part of that love that I have for them. Anyway, to the game. I'm actually going to read this because it's kind of a lot to take on. It seems like a simple game, but there's a lot of verbiage here. Now, players start at Baghdad and each select one of the 4 voyages: the Gulf of Fear, the Bay of Horrors, the Sea of Monsters, or the Impossible Ocean. Each sea has 4 islands guarded by monsters. Awesome. 3 treasures are placed on each island. Players, which it's 2 to 4 players, use a spinner to move around the 4 islands. When landing on the right spot, they may also spin to get treasure. Some spots give the opportunity for treasure, but also mean a monster must be fought. Other spots move the player back a space. When one player completes his journey, the round ends, and whoever has the most treasure wins. Players can change voyages and continue until each player has made all 4 voyages. The player with the highest treasure score after all 4 voyages wins the game. I would have definitely have loved to find this when I was a kid. I mean, it probably was in the Goodwill while I was browsing one day when I was a wee lad, but just totally missed my eyesight. I mean, like I said, I love the Sinbad movies. I love the monsters. They still have a huge, special place in my heart. And it seems like a lot of other people share that thought as well, because on the secondary market, this goes for a lot of money. This is definitely the most expensive board game on this list. And rightfully so, because, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome looking. I don't know how the gameplay is, but this board alone should be framed and hung somewhere. It's a thing of beauty. Our third forgotten board game is probably one of the most popular on this list because it seems to have a large fan following. And from a lot of the research that I did on it, I can see why, because it seems like a lot of fun. Now, this is the Sorcerer's Cave, and it was released by Ariel Productions Limited in 1978. Again, there's a lot of stuff here to go over, so please don't mind me reading the notes that I took on it. This game is for 1 to 4 players, and yeah, it was actually made to be played solo if you wanted, so that would have fit perfectly with me as a kid, you know, not having any friends and all. But as it says, though greatly simplified, it was inspired by the fantasy role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. Unlike D&D, you don't need a game master or a referee. One of its strengths is that it can be played solo or competitively as well as cooperatively. Another is the diplomatic aspect of interactions between players with changing agendas. In general, players gather and control a party, or parties, of adventurers who explore a multi-level dungeon that is randomly generated by drawing area cards from a deck. Encounters include special rooms, traps, monsters, allies, magic items, and treasures. Players start by creating a party from various character types found in the game. Characters are differentiated by fighting strength, magic power, and various unique abilities. All explorers start on the central gateway tile and process by drawing area tiles, tunnels, chambers, or various special chambers. If the tile is a chamber, the player then draws a number of smaller encounter cards. 1 card plus 1 for each deeper level, up to 4. So the deeper you go in the dungeon, the more monster cards you can draw. That's pretty cool. And you must deal with the characters and objects drawn, like the monsters, treasures, allies, things like that. Encounter cards represent valuables, magic items, and characters. If a chamber is occupied by a non-player character, the player must either withdraw, attack, or approach. In each case, a die roll determines whether characters are neutral, friendly, or hostile. The winning player is the one who escapes the cave with the most treasure. Rules for both solo play and competitive play are given with several variations on victory conditions offered. I mean, this seems like it would be so much fun. Just a dungeon crawl game that is completely random and would be different each time you would play it. I feel like no one would get the upper hand if you're used to playing something. There's always that one person, like me in Monopoly, that seems to dominate because they just have a, strict method of doing things. This, with random generated dungeons, seems like it would be different every time and throw people a little off kilter. Super cool. Now, some of the pictures that I found online of people still playing it today have miniatures involved in it. D&D, whatever, type miniatures. Super awesome. I mean, this looks like a lot of fun. And they actually released expansion packs for it in the 80s that included different types of dungeon surroundings and items and stuff like that. Now, this is also a pricey game to get your hands on. And again, I think it's well worth it because of how great it seems and the popularity of it. Now, the creator of the game actually released a computer version of it that can be found for free on his website. I'll try to pop it down here if you're interested in checking it out. I know I will be. Our fourth game may sound like a blatant ripoff, but hear me out. This is Warlocks and Warriors. And before you cry foul on the names and the ampersand, let me tell you, this actually comes from TSR. This was made as an introductory to role-playing games, if you will. It's a simplified board game that was to engage players in picking either a class, warlock, or warrior, and either using magic or swords to accomplish their goal. Now, an ad for the game actually says this is a fast-paced, introductory level fantasy game. The action is great fun for young and old alike, as players escort the lovely Princess Sharana across parched deserts and through dismal swamps to the safety of her father's castle. Beware the dragon and the demon maze. The hazards are many, but bring the princess safely to her father and half his kingdom is yours. Sounds like a fair deal. Now, the game map is very nice. And one of the things that I really like about it, and I might save these for my own games in the future, but they have these little blocks of random things that can happen. Either it be running into a monster, other various combat situations, environmental situations. I mean, it's super cool. And they're printed right on the map. There's 4 of them in total for each different area of the game map. So I think that's really cool. Now, this is actually the second most expensive game on the list. And I can see why. If you're a completionist and want a full early release D&D collection, you would definitely need to get this, because they actually made this, like I said, to be an introductory step into the role-playing world. And I think that's really cool. I mean, it's kind of nice marketing, because, I mean, you could just be playing a normal game and, hey, let's try this next step up. And voila, you're playing D&D. Now, for our 5th and final Forgotten 70s board game, we're going to take a look at a family-friendly kids game from the world of fantasy. This is the Wacky Wizard game by Whitman, released in 1977. Now, this may have just sailed under my radar, if not for what the game's plot is, which is pretty interesting and fits within the fantasy realm perfectly. Now, this game is for 2 to 4 players. I mean, a pretty classic configuration for a kid's game. But you are actually in the role of an unfortunate victim of a loony wizard. You are changed into one of 6 types of animals: bats, spiders, snakes, etc. The players must gather the ingredients necessary to break the spell over them. Now, you take turns to play. Players move their piece on the board based on the flicking of a spinner. Ingredient discs are placed at the edges of the board, and a player's piece must land exactly on the spaces to collect the items. To break the spell over them, the creatures need to collect 2 different ingredients with their own symbols. Like a turtle would require an eye of newt and a fingernail of a newt. If the spinner lands on the Wacky Wizard symbol, the player draws a wizard spell card from this really cool pop-up wizard and table. So you pull the card right off his table. That's pretty cool. But the spell card will turn his or her player piece into another creature, thereby canceling out all the pieces that you've collected so far. The first player to break the enchantment over his or her piece wins and ends the game. Like I said, if this was a normal kids game, it probably would have sailed under my radar. But the whole fact that you are playing just people that were turned into turtles and lizards and bats and rats, I mean, that just sounds so fantastical. It sounds like something from a fairy tale, from a fantasy novel, and I think that's really awesome. Now, this is definitely the cheapest board game on the list on the secondary market, and it seems to be pretty readily available. Now, I'm not sure if there were reprints of this in like the later 70s or 80s that makes the price not so crazy, or it's just the fact that it's a kid's game and not, tactical or role-playing inspired, but more fairy tale inspired. I don't know. Either way, it sounds like a fun game, and I would love to sit around the table and play this with my kids or other adults. Doesn't matter to me. Okay. Okay, folks, that was a look at 5 forgotten 70s board games that are based on fantasy. Like I said, I think deep down in my heart, and I'm sure somebody has tracked it and there's a timeline, but fantasy in the board game genre exploded because of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, D&D, before the whole satanic panic crap started, was really building up a lot of steam. I mean, in the 70s we had toys, a cartoon, dozens and dozens of fantasy movies, I mean, that I think were directly inspired by D&D, and also, you know, fantasy novels that were also making a big boom in the 70s as well. I mean, I think that satanic panic just really derailed something. I mean, we could be living in a total fantasy-packed world if it wasn't for that crap just bringing down something that is truly innocent and fun. Anyway, I'm going to get down on my soapbox. I love role-playing games. There's a definite hole in my life where I don't play them as much as I used to. I'm getting my kids used to playing games, and we really love Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland. I did a review on that before, but yeah, love that game. And it is just dripping with awesome 80s sentimentality. Love it. Anyway, enough of that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the other videos that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. So anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.